Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 12 of Learn Lightroom 6, also called Lightroom CC. In this episode, we're going to create an HDR image. Now, I mentioned this is episode 12. I have one more episode to go in this series. I'm going to wrap up all loose ends and talk about things I didn't already cover in any of the previous episodes. Once episode 13 is done, I'm going to be redoing all the videos and make those videos available for purchase. Now, I want to stress that the Lightroom videos will always be free on YouTube, but I always get emails from folks asking me to buy them. They want them on their computer. So I'm going to have a DVD available, I believe, for purchase, and you could just download the files if you prefer to have on your internet, the video files. Now, currently, right now, you could purchase all the raw files used in all 13 episodes. If you click right here, it'll bring you over to my website, and you could purchase the raw files and then work along with me in the videos. You could work on the exact file I'm using in the video. Now, I mentioned this episode 12, and we're going to be doing HDR. Now, if you look down here in the film strip, you see I have 5 images. This is a bracket set of 5 images that are all one step apart. The image that is being displayed right now is, at least according to my camera, properly exposed. This one at the far left is 2 stops of overexposure. This one is 1 step over. This was the properly exposed one. That is 1 step under, and that is 2 steps under. So we have this bracketed set of 5 images. Now, in previous versions of Lightroom, HDR wasn't available inside of Lightroom. We needed another program to create the HDR image. And in my training videos for those previous versions of Lightroom, I mentioned that we should do some pre-processing to the images before we send it over to that other program to make the HDR image. And specifically, I would adjust white balance and I would add lens corrections. The big advantage now in Lightroom 6, Lightroom CC, which handles HDR images directly, is we don't have to do that anymore because when we're done, when the merged or this merged HDR image is created, it will be a raw file and it will contain all the data that a typical raw file will have. So we don't have to do lens corrections ahead of time. We won't get stuck and pigeonholed into a white balance that we may not like. We could actually adjust it in that raw file when we're done. So we don't have to do anything. Just go out and take a bracketed set of images, load them into Lightroom, and we could immediately send these into the HDR um, dialog in Lightroom, create the HDR image. It's going to be a raw image, and we'll adjust it from there. So we want to select all 5 of these to send them over into the HDR dialog. So we're going to click on the first one, and I'm going to hold the shift key in and click on the last one. So we have them all selected. Now, there's 4 different ways to send these over into that HDR dialog. The shortcut keys is Command H because I have a Mac. If you have a PC, it's Control H. It's easy to remember, H for HDR. That's the fastest way. If you prefer, you could right click on any of these thumbnails. It'll bring up this menu and you could go to Photo Merge HDR. You could right click on the image itself, go to Photo Merge HDR, or you could go up to the top menu, Photo Merge HDR. And you can see it brings up this HDR Merge Preview dialog box, and it will create an HDR preview of our image. And as you can see, it's nothing spectacular, right? It's just kind of a scene of this grungy old basement here. And there's a couple things though that you could control. And you can see it says HDR options, and we have 2 checkboxes. The first one is auto align. Now, I shot this on a tripod, so I really know that I'm pretty sure that every image should be identical. The only thing difference is the exposure. The camera did not move at all. If you handheld the shot and you took a bracketed set of images, definitely check that box, and Lightroom will do its best to match the images up so that corresponding pixels or upon corresponding pixels, okay? Now, auto tone. When I check this box, you're going to see that the image changes considerably and it looks better. And I've received a lot of emails from folks asking me why, why wouldn't you check auto tone? Well, if you look over here just at the basic panel of, I think I was on this first image, you can see that all these sliders are right down the middle. If I do not have auto tone checked, when I create the HDR image, all these sliders will be right down the middle. With auto tone checked, Lightroom will pre-process the image, meaning the machine, the computer, is going to process the image for me. And all these sliders will be pre-adjusted. Now that's a great thing if you want to save time. It's just click auto tone. It's going to automatically adjust the sliders, so it'll save you a lot of time. The bad thing is it takes some creative control away from you. Now, of course, you could go back in and readjust these sliders if you so choose. That's up to you. But maybe you don't want to be influenced by anyone, even a machine, pre-adjusting these sliders. So it's up to you. You keep it unchecked, it's going to look like garbage here, but you're going to be able to adjust it later. You have the full power of a raw file at your disposal. You check it, it's just going to pre-process it, and you could tweak it later. So it's up to you. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, as my mom would say. Now, for this demonstration, I'm going to keep it unchecked because I want to show you how to process the image from scratch, more or less. So we're not checking that. Now, deghost amount. This is more applicable if you took the shot outside and there was a breeze or a wind. You had trees swaying in the breeze, leaves fluttering, you had grass moving, you had ripples on water. In that case, you'd have a lot of movement in the final shot, a lot of ghosting. So if you click anything other than none, the image will, the software, the algorithms in the software will look for this movement and try to eliminate it. And you have different degrees, low, medium, and high. So if it's very windy, you might need high. If it's just a gentle breeze and there's not a lot of trees in the shot to begin with, maybe you could get away with low. Now what you would do is you would click one and you could click this checkbox right here. And what you'll see is you'll get an overlay, and this shows you the parts of the image that are being affected by this deghost algorithm that the computer or the software is using. Now, in this case, I mentioned this is a shot on a tripod. Obviously, it's indoors. There was no wind or anything. Well, why is it affecting any of the image? Well, these are kind of cobwebs, and I think the different exposures, especially the underexposed settings, the cobwebs maybe didn't come into view. The sensor didn't sense them, so it's just kind of black. And then in some other of the brighter images, it sees the cobweb there. Well, it's thinking that that might be motion, so it's trying to eliminate the motion. But I'm not impressed, so I'm going to click no, or none, I should say, because I know this was inside. There was no open doors, nothing like that. The camera was on a tripod, so nothing was really moving. I don't think even the cobwebs or the spider webs or whatever those things are were moving at all. So we're going to leave that on none. And that's it. That's really the few settings you have in this dialog. Now all we're going to do is click merge, and you'll see there's a status bar up here, and it doesn't take very long to merge to HDR. To merge to a panorama does take a little longer. Okay, then we click on this image. This is our HDR image now, and you can see it's a .dng. That is Adobe's raw file. That's a digital negative. So we have all the power of a raw file, and this is the real advantage of doing it inside of Lightroom. Now, as I mentioned, since I did not have that auto tone checkbox checked, all the sliders are straight down the middle. So we could just adjust this like we do any other image. Now white balance is fine. I'm not going to mess with that. Exposure is fine. Contrast, as you guys know by now, I prefer to apply contrast in the tone curve. I think on 90 to 95% of my images I use the tone curve. May sometimes use the contrast slider. We'll see in this image. Now, First thing right away I see it's really dark back here, and I know there were cobwebs and crap back there, and I want that to show through. So I'm going to adjust shadows first. I'm going to open those way up. And as you can see, all that grunge is now come into view. So I opened up the shadows. Now highlights, I don't know which way to go with them. It really looks okay. So I'm going to try turning them up a little bit and then try turning them down a little bit. And I do prefer them being down a little bit. I just think it looks a little better. Probably between 30 and 40 looks good to me. So right there is fine. Now, those of you that have watched my Lightroom 6 CC videos know that I do not adjust whites and blacks yet. I save that till I do some other settings. First of all is clarity. I like to adjust clarity before I do whites and blacks. And I'm going to bring it pretty high on this image because there's just so much grungy detail I want to show off. So I have that pretty high. Now again, these adjustments are to my own personal preference. I encourage you to do it your way so you like the image. It's going to be your shot, your image. Do it your way. These are just the way I personally like to do the settings. I'm going to do vibrance up a little bit, well, quite a bit maybe. I'm not doing saturation at all. I prefer not to use saturation. I'm going to jump down to tone curve, and as you know, I go to this little drop down here and I try medium contrast, and already I could tell I don't like that. It made back here too dark. I really want to show off that grunge back there. So if medium contrast is bad, strong contrast will be worse. So I'm not going to use the tone curve for contrast. I'm going to go back up to the basic panel. Now I could adjust the black slider and that will bring that out a little more, but I'm going to just adjust the contrast slider. As I mentioned, I don't usually adjust the contrast slider. I prefer using the tone curve, but in this case, I will adjust the contrast slider. And in the next episode, I will show you the difference between the contrast slider and adding contrast with the tone curve. Um, you may prefer one over the other like I do. I prefer the tone curve. You may prefer the contrast slider. But I'm just going to show you the difference in the next. That will be one of the things we'll be covering in the next video. All right, now we're going to adjust whites and blacks finally. Right off the bat, whites look pretty good to me as is. I'm going to adjust it anyway and see where I stand. I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key, and it's Alt if you have a PC, Option if you have a Mac, and then click on the left mouse button. Now right away, with that at 0, I see that this piece of chrome right here is clipped. You can see that is very bright right there. Well, I'm going to disregard that. I don't care if that clips. It's just a tiny little, you know, part of the image, so I'm not worried about that. So I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to click down again on the Alt or Option key and with the left mouse button, and I'm going to move to the right. And you can see stuff is starting to bleed through there. I'm going to back it off. This is the way I like to do it until all that is gone. Now again, this is showing through and I'm not worried about that. So now I have the white point adjusted. Now the black point, I want to see back here a little more. So I'm going to hold the Alt or Option key in, and I'm going to click down, and you know that I like to have some of the blacks clip, usually in my images, because I think it adds more depth to the shot. Now, your personal taste may vary, but as I do it, I would say bring it to about there. But I look back here and it's still too dark back here. I don't like it. It's just too dark. It's dark up in here. I want to see more of that. So I'm not going to hold the Alt or Option key in. I'm not going to hold the Shift key in. I'm just going to adjust blacks visually and move it to the right until I could see back in here and see, see up in here. That's pretty good. I like it like that. So I think my basic panel is adjusted. Fine with me. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not using tone curve. I'm going to go right to the HSL color B and W tab. I want to see what this looks like in black and white, so I'm going to click on that. And that doesn't look good to me. I think it's much better in color, so I'm going to leave it in color. Go back to the HSL tab. Now, hue, saturation, and luminance are kind of sub-tabs under that tab. I mentioned in previous videos I never mess with hue. I don't like changing, you know, the red to pink or anything like that, or the blue to purple. I just leave it alone. We're going to go to saturation though, and I want to increase some colors here, but I don't know specifically maybe what colors. I think there's some reds and oranges up in here. So an easier way maybe than going to that saturation tab is jump over to the luminance tab first and go to it like red and just move it around like drastically, and you'll really see what is being affected. And I could see that this is being affected, this piece of wood right here, and these labels a little bit on the cement too are being affected by the luminance red. Now I like it pushed down. I think that brings out this wood a little better, and so I'm going to pull it down just a little bit. Then I'm going to jump back to saturation tab, and I'm going to move the saturation slider around. I don't want to take color out. I'm either just going to increase it or leave it at 0. So around plus 13 looks good. Go back to the luminance tab. I'm going to move this orange slider around, and that is really affecting surprisingly a lot. So we're just going to pull that down just a little bit too. And then we'll go to the saturation. I'm going to push that up just a touch. Now I'll go back to luminance. I'm going to do yellow. See, yellow is mainly affecting the bins and the labels on the bins. It's not really doing anything for me, so I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to go to green. That should affect the bins as well. Yeah, I'm just going to pull that down a little bit, like that. And I think I'm done with the HSL Color B&W tab. I'm not going to do any split toning. Now, detail. Um, I want to make it as sharp as possible just because of, all this grunginess in here. But then again, I did do a video that details sharpening and noise reduction in detail in the detail tab. I forgot which video it was. I think it might have been video 4 or 5. Anyways, so I would probably more painstakingly adjust these sliders than I will in this video, only to save time. So I'm going to use that quick and dirty sharpening. I'm just going to move amount somewhere in the 70s. Now, noise reduction, as I look at the image, I'm going to look around. I don't really see any noise. It's very noise free in my opinion. So I'm not going to adjust the noise reduction slider at all. And I mentioned this many times, just because the slider is there doesn't mean you have to push it around. So I'm leaving that one alone. Going to do some lens corrections. Now this was one of the adjustments that we would do first before we send it to an external HDR program. But if we go right to the profile tab and I click this button, you'll see there's barrel distortion in this image. You'll see it go away and you'll see my lens profile come in. You can see the barrel distortion cleaned right up, and I used a Nikon lens. So I'm going to click it again. There's without the profile correction and with the profile correction. So that's a great advantage of doing this HDR inside of Lightroom, is the just it creating the raw file is really a great thing. I mean, it adds a lot to your post-processing when you're done creating or merging it into an HDR image. We're going to remove chromatic aberration, even though I don't think anything's in there. It's straight. I don't have to worry about straightening it or anything like that. So we're done with lens corrections. I'm going to add a slight vignette. I usually like to add a dark vignette. I should say I almost always like to add a dark vignette. I don't remember adding white vignettes very often. So just a little bit, -10. Now we're going to camera calibration. Let's do this single slider photo pop. It probably won't look good on this image, but remember we mentioned this before. We go to the saturation slider in the blue primary and push it to the right. And it's not really doing anything for me, so I'm going to return that back to the middle. Now we're going to go to the profile. Now again, I always have to stress this because I get emails so much from this. What you have in this drop down is going to be dependent on what kind of camera you're using. Every camera is different. Some cameras have a lot of choices. Fuji, for example, I have Fuji cameras. They have a lot of choices here, probably twice as many. Then again, if you have an old Sony camera, an older Sony camera, maybe 4 years old, you won't have anything. You won't have any choices at all. The newer Sony cameras, though, do. They have a lot of choices. If you shot anything but RAW, if you shot JPEG, you won't have any choices. So that's an advantage of shooting RAW. So in this case, it was a Nikon RAW file. I have all these Nikon choices in here. And you could choose them. Camera landscape, you can see the image change considerably. Go to neutral. You could try these out. Now, I had someone email me just yesterday, I believe, and they asked me, why don't I do these to begin with? Like right at the beginning. And you know what? I don't know why. You really could. And they said they do. And you probably would want to, it probably would be a good habit to jump right down into camera calibration and choose one of these right away, then go back and start adjusting the image in the basic panel on down. It's probably save you some time because you could see it really changes the image a lot. And I kind of like Camera Vivid, what it's doing for the colors, but you can see it's adding a lot of contrast that I don't like. So then I would have to go back up to the basic tab and I would have to go to the contrast slider and pull some of that contrast away so I could still see back in here. So that, is just something you might want to keep in mind. And if you're just learning Lightroom, maybe get in the habit of jumping down here right away. To an old dude like me that's been doing it a while, it's hard to get in that habit. I usually just jump right in the basic panel and I forget to go down there until I get to it. So that's really up to you. Maybe that's something you want to get in the habit of doing. So I consider this image done. I did use the Camera Vivid profile, which is available with my Nikon camera that I happen to use for this image, and then I went back and I took contrast down. Remember I had that around +10, now it's -35. I did that so I could see back in there better. That's it. That's it for episode 12. I hope that helps everyone, with merging to HDR. It's a great new feature in Lightroom 6, Lightroom CC. And I gotta laugh, is I rarely get any thumbs down on YouTube. I mean, I do get a few, everyone does. There's always negative people out there, or maybe the video didn't load or whatever, and they'll do a thumb arrow now and then, or a thumb down now and then. It's really no big deal. But whenever I do a video on HDR, I get like a lot more, like 3 times as many than I normally get. And what I think is that why I think that's funny is two things. I sell Lightroom presets and I sell one package or one bundle I call them is gives your image an HDR look. That is my #1 selling bundle. So, as much as people disdain and hate HDR, my #1 preset bundle in sale is my HDR preset bundle. The other thing is one of the most popular and successful photographers on the planet is Trey Ratcliffe, and he is predominantly an HDR photographer, and he has beautiful images, and I think he has an image or more hanging up in the Smithsonian, an HDR image it is. So that's pretty impressive. So I just find that kind of amusing that people really disdain HDR so much, but will watch the video and give it a thumbs down. But then again, I sell so many presets, and one of the greatest photographers on the planet is predominantly an HDR photographer. But that's, a discussion for some other place. Again, thank you very much for watching my videos. I truly do appreciate it. Again, if you want the raw files used in these videos, click right there and it will bring you over to my website where you could purchase them. If you guys haven't already, I would appreciate it if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please do. Thank you, everyone. Again, I'll talk to you guys soon.